It's been a few days since the death of Alexei Navalny, Russian President Vladimir Putin's most prominent domestic critic. His mysterious death was announced by the Federal Penitentiary Services of Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous District Prison, where he was jailed since January of 2021. All that the prison officials declared was that Navalny felt unwell after taking a short walk and almost immediately lost consciousness. Navalny's mother has called it the sudden death syndrome because this isn't the first time a critic of Putin has died under mysterious circumstances. Many of them have often met with violent death at the peak of their conflicts with the Kremlin. Think shootings, poisoning, plane crashes, increasingly common, falling off windows. That gets passed off as a suicide. These are just some of the alleged methods used by Russia to silence its critics. More often than not, these deaths remain unsolved, and the Kremlin dismisses them as propaganda to demonize Putin and delegitimize his 23-year-old long regime. Let's look at the other critics that have met this similar fate. But before we get into those details, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Moneycontrol's YouTube channel for more such content. Let me jog your memory a little bit. Not so long ago, in August of 2023 to be precise, Yevgeny Prigozhin, a top lieutenant of the Wagner private military company, was killed in a plane crash. His death came to light barely 2 months after the launch of that armed rebellion against Moscow. Prigozhin had vowed to topple the Russian military leadership and questioned the motive of the ongoing war in Ukraine. Prigozhin was then moved to Belarus after a deal was brokered by the country's president. The Kremlin insisted it was a complete lie and it had nothing to do with that jet crash. Let's look at those who died due to poisoning. One of the first cases that comes to light is that of Alexander Litvinenko, a Putin opponent who died of polonium-210 poisoning in London in 2006. Ironically, just before Litvinenko's death, he had told journalists that the SFB, or the Federal Security Services in Russia, was still operating poison labs dating back to the Soviet era. An independent inquiry by the Britishers concluded that Russian agents were involved in Litvinenko's death. In fact, there were alleged attempts in the past too to have Navalny assassinated. In 2020, Navalny was poisoned with a military nerve agent. He had then blamed Putin for the attempt on his life. However, the president denied all charges. Navalny was then being treated in Germany and returned to Russia only in 2021, but was then arrested on parole violation charges, and that's when he landed up at the Yamalo-Nenets prison. Deaths by shooting. One of the most brazen killings of a Putin critic was in 2015, the shooting of Boris Nemtsov, an opposition leader who even served as the deputy prime minister of Russia. Nemtsov was shot 4 times in the back by an unknown assailant within just meters away from the Kremlin. According to a BBC and Bellingcat investigations, Nemtsov had been shadowed by the SFB agents for almost a year before he was killed and assassinated on that bridge. Moving on to the murder of Anna Politkovskaya. She was a prominent journalist and a persistent chronicler of rights abuses in Chechnya. She was shot dead in her apartment building after returning home from the supermarket. 5 men, including one former police officer, were later convicted for the murder. But those close to Anna described them as mere hired guns carrying out somebody else's orders. To the ones that fell off buildings, here's the case of Ravel Magov. He was the chairman of the board of Russia's second largest oil producer, Lukoil. Ravel Magov had openly criticized the war in Ukraine. Magonov's company had called for the soonest termination of the armed conflict, also expressing sincere empathy for all the victims. However, in September of 2022, the 67-year-old Magov died apparently from falling from the 6th floor window of the Central Clinical Hospital in Moscow. Closer home, Russian lawmaker and philanthropist Pavel Antov reportedly died in a hotel in Odisha after he mysteriously fell from the 3rd floor. He was the second Russian to die in the same hotel within a gap of just 2 days. Antov, a multi-millionaire, was on vacation in the Rayagada region of Odisha, where he was celebrating his 66th birthday. According to the police, he was allegedly found dead, having fallen off the 3rd floor hotel window. These were just some of the cases that have come to light for now. The Russian authorities have told Alexei Navalny's family that his body will be held for 2 more weeks for chemical analysis, while the Kremlin maintains that investigation into Navalny's death is still ongoing and that there were no results that were conclusive as yet.